While you're stressing about holiday shopping and counting down to New Year's Eve, billionaires are doing something completely different with December. They're not celebrating. They're not relaxing. They're executing. December isn't the end of their year. It's the strategic setup for total domination in the next one. Tax optimization, portfolio rebalancing, year-end deals that most people never hear about, relationship audits, mental resets. They've turned the last month of the year into a psychological and financial weapon. And the gap between how they use December versus how you use it, that's exactly why they stay in the 1% and you're still grinding. If you're into this kind of content, subscribe to just 1% and comment your favorite topic about the top 1% mindset. Let's be real about something. Right now, it's December. And for most people, December means one thing: survival mode. You're trying to finish work projects before the holidays. You're stressing about gifts. You're dealing with family drama. You're mentally checked out, just waiting for the calendar to flip to January so you can start fresh with your New Year's resolutions. You see December as the end, a time to wind down, relax, and coast into the new year. Billionaires, they see December completely differently. To them, December isn't the end of anything. It's a strategic weapon. It's the month where they make moves that set them up to dominate the entire next year, while everyone else is distracted by holiday lights and champagne toasts. And here is the uncomfortable truth: the way you spend. December versus how they spend December is a massive reason why the wealth gap keeps widening. While you're on autopilot, they're executing at full speed. While you're celebrating, they're calculating. And by the time January hits, they're already 10 steps ahead. So let's break down what the 1% are actually doing right now. Not the Instagram version. Not the yacht photos or the luxury vacation posts. The real December routine. The financial moves, the psychological frameworks, the strategic decisions that most people never see. Because once you understand how they use this month, you'll never look at December the same way again. The Year-End Financial Blitz, when billionaires move money. First thing you need to understand, December is the biggest money-moving month of the year for the ultra-wealthy. Not because they're shopping for presents, because the tax code rewards them for it, and they've built entire strategies around December 31st being the deadline for everything. Let's talk tax loss harvesting. This is a tactic most people have never even heard of, but the 1% use it religiously. Here's how it works. Throughout the year, they've invested in various assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, crypto, whatever. Some of those investments went up, some went down. In December, they strategically sell the losing investments to realize the losses on paper. Those losses offset their gains, which lowers their taxable income. Then, and this is key, they immediately buy back similar assets, so they're still invested in the market, but now they've reduced their tax bill by hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. It's completely legal. It's called tax optimization, and it only works if you do it before December 31st. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway does this every year. You'll see headlines in late December about Buffett selling certain positions. It's not panic. It's not a market call. It's tax strategy. He's locking in losses to offset gains. Meanwhile, the average person doesn't even think about their taxes until April, when it's too late to optimize anything. Then there's charitable giving. And before you think this is about generosity, let me tell you what's really happening. The ultra-wealthy give massive donations in December, not just because they care about the cause, but because charitable donations are tax deductible. If you're in the highest tax bracket and you donate $10 million to a foundation, you can reduce your taxable income by $10 million. You just saved $3 to $4 million in taxes. And here's the thing. A lot of these donations go to their own foundations or donor-advised funds, which means they still control how the money gets spent. It's not leaving their ecosystem, it's just being repositioned for tax efficiency. In 2022 alone, over $500 billion was donated to charity in the US, and a huge chunk of that happened in the last 2 weeks of December. Why? Because that's the tax deadline. The 1% aren't making emotional decisions about giving. They're making calculated financial moves that happen to also look good publicly. It's strategy disguised as generosity. There's also something most people don't see: year-end bonuses and equity compensation. A lot of billionaires and executives structure their income so they receive stock options, bonuses, or equity grants in December. Why? Because they can defer taxes, reinvest immediately, or use the end-of-year timing to their advantage in ways that do and apply if the income comes in June. Everything about their financial calendar is engineered around December 31st. That date isn't just symbolic. It's literally the difference between paying millions in taxes or keeping it. So while you're buying gifts and going into debt to make the holidays feel special, billionaires are moving millions of dollars around, optimizing their tax position and setting themselves up financially for the next year. The contrast isn't subtle. It's brutal. The relationship audit cutting debt weight before the new year. Now let's talk about something darker. The relationship audit. Most people don't do this. Most people keep the same friends, the same network, the same contacts year after year, even if those relationships aren't serving them. The 1% don't operate like that. December for them is when they evaluate every person in their network and make cold, calculated decisions about who stays and who goes. Here's how they think about it. Your network is capital. Every person you're connected to is either adding value to your life through opportunities, information, support, or resources, or they're taking value away through drama, distraction, or dead energy. The elite treat relationships like investments. If the ROI isn't there, they cut it. No guilt, no emotion, just strategy. In December, they'll review who they spent time with over the past year, who opened doors, who introduced them to valuable people, who brought them deals or insights. Those people stay. They get prioritized in the new year. They get the dinner invitations, the calls, the investment opportunities. But the people who didn't contribute, the ones who just took time and energy without adding anything back, those relationships quietly disappear. No dramatic breakup, no explanation, just ... distance. Calls don't get returned. Invitations get declined. By February, the person doesn't even realize they've been phased out. Now, this sounds cold. And it is. But here's the logic behind it. The 1% understand that time is finite. You only have so many hours in a year, so many dinners you can take, so many calls you can make. If you're spending that time on people who don't move your life forward, you're actively losing. So they ruthlessly prioritize the relationships that matter and let everything else fade. There's also something called network refresh in December. They're actively reaching out to people they haven't talked to in a while, but only strategic people. Old business contacts, former colleagues who've leveled up, investors they want to build rapport with. December is full of happy holidays messages that seem casual but are actually relationship maintenance. They're planting seeds, staying top of mind, positioning themselves for opportunities in Q1. Every text, every email, every holiday card is calculated. And here's the part that hits different. They're not doing this out of malice. They genuinely believe this is smart. To them, keeping people in your life who do and serve your growth is the real betrayal. You're re-betraying your own potential. So relationship audit isn't cruel. It's efficient. It's the same logic they apply to business. Cut what's not working, double down on what is, but the cost? The cost is that relationships become transactional. Friendships become conditional. And over time, a lot of the ultra-wealthy end up surrounded by people who are useful but not actually close. They have networks, but not communities. Contacts, but not friends. That's the trade-off. And in December, when they're making these cuts, they're reinforcing that isolation, even if they don't fully realize it. December deals, the hidden market advantage. Here's something most people never think about. Some of the biggest business deals of the year happen in December. Not in June, not in October, December. And there's a reason for that. While everyone else is checked out, distracted, and mentally on vacation, the 1% are hunting for deals. They know that December is when sellers get desperate, when competition is asleep, and when opportunities appear that wouldn't exist any other month. Let me explain the psychology. If you're trying to sell a business, close a funding round, or exit an investment, you want to do it before the year ends. Why? Because it affects your financials for that tax year. It impacts how you report earnings. It determines bonuses, equity vesting, investor returns. December 31st is the hard deadline. So if it's mid-December and a deal hasn't closed yet, sellers start getting nervous. They start making concessions. They start lowering their price or agreeing to terms they wouldn't accept in July. And the 1%, they know this, so they wait. They let sellers sweat. And then in the last 2 weeks of December, they swoop in with lowball offers that suddenly seem reasonable because the seller is out of time. There's a famous example. In December 2016, SoftBank invested $100 million in a struggling startup called Brandless. The deal happened in the final days of the year. The startup needed the cash to survive, and SoftBank got terms that were heavily in their favor because the timing pressure was massive. That's December leverage. If that negotiation had happened in March, the terms would have been completely different. This also applies to real estate. High net worth individuals often close property deals in December because sellers are motivated to get the sale done before the year ends for tax reasons. They'll accept slightly lower offers just to avoid carrying the asset into the next year. The 1% know this. So while you're at holiday parties, they're closing deals on properties, businesses, and investments at discounts that only exist because of the calendar. And here's the other side of it. They're also setting up Q1 moves in December. They're having conversations with investors, partners, and clients who are about to get their New Year budgets. They're positioning themselves to be first in line when those budgets unlock in January. So by the time you're making your New Year's resolutions, they've already secured commitments, locked in deals, and set up revenue streams for the entire first quarter. They're not starting from zero in January. They're starting from momentum they built in December. The average person sees December as a time to slow down. The 1% see it as a time to capitalize on the fact that everyone else is slowing down. It's a competitive advantage hiding in plain sight. Strategic reflection, the cold, data-driven year review. Okay, let's talk about reflection. Most people do some version of year-end reflection, right? You think about the highs and lows, maybe write in a journal, maybe post a sentimental Instagram caption about growth and gratitude. The 1% do reflection too. But their version is nothing like yours. It's not emotional. It's not sentimental. It's forensic. Here's how they do it. They pull data. Lots of data. How much money did they make? How much did they spend? What investments performed well? Which ones underperformed? How many hours did they work? Who did they spend time with? What habits did they maintain? What habits did they drop? They're not asking, was I happy this year? They're asking, was I effective this year? It's a performance review, not a feelings check-in. A lot of billionaires work with executive coaches or personal analysts who help them break down the year into metrics. There's a spreadsheet. There's a dashboard. There are charts showing productivity, revenue, ROI on time, even relationship value. It's borderline robotic. But here's why they do it. Data removes bias. If you just reflect based on feelings, you'll remember the dramatic moments, the big wins, the painful losses. But you'll miss the patterns. You'll miss the small habits that compounded into big results, or the tiny mistakes that cost you more than you realized. The elite want to see the patterns. So they analyze the year like it's a business quarter. What worked? Double down on that. What didn't work? Cut it. What surprised them? Investigate why. And then they take those insights and build the next year's strategy around them. It's not about gratitude or positivity. It's about optimization. Here's a real example. Ray Dalio, the billionaire founder of Bridgewater Associates, is famous for his principles, a system of rules he's developed over decades by reflecting on what worked and what didn't. He documents every major decision, every mistake, every success, and then extracts lessons from them. His December reflection isn't a journal entry. It's a data analysis session that updates his operating system for the next year. That's the level of rigor we're talking about. And here's what's kind of dark about this. When you approach reflection this way, you stop seeing the year as a story. You see it as a data set. You lose the emotional texture, the messy, human, unpredictable parts of life. You gain clarity, but you lose soul. And a lot of the ultra-wealthy operate in that space. They can tell you exactly how productive they were, but they can't tell you the last time they felt truly joyful. That's the trade-off. Positioning for January domination, the Q1 setup. Here's where it all comes together. Everything the 1% do in December is set up. They're not winding down, they're winding up. By the time January 1st hits, they're not starting from scratch. They're launching from a position of advantage they spent all December building. Let's talk specifics. In December, they're booking key meetings for early January. They're reaching out to decision makers, investors, and clients before the holidays, saying, let's connect first week of January. So while you're still recovering from New Year's and trying to remember what your goals were, they've already had 5 high-stakes meetings and closed 2 deals. They're not waiting for momentum to build, they built it in advance. They're also front-loading their Q1 commitment. A lot of elite entrepreneurs will pre-sell services, lock in contracts, or secure funding commitments in December that kick in January 1st. So their revenue doesn't start at 0. It starts at 6 or 7 figures because they set it up ahead of time. Meanwhile, the average person is hoping January will be a good month. The 1% already know it will be because they engineered it. There's also mental preparation. While most people spend December in a fog of holiday stress and sugar crashes, the 1% are already in execution mode for the new year. They've mapped out Q1 goals. They've scheduled their workouts, their deep work blocks, their travel. They're not figuring it out in January. They're executing a plan they finalized in December. And here's what makes this so effective. They're making moves while competition is non-existent. Most businesses and professionals are checked out from mid-December to early January. That's 3 weeks where the playing field is wide open. The 1% use that window to get ahead. They're signing clients who would normally have 5 other options, but in December, they're the only ones showing up. They're closing deals that would take months to negotiate, but in December, decision makers have time and want to wrap things up. It's a strategic timing advantage that most people never think about. By January 5th, 10th, when most people are just getting back into their groove, the 1% have already hit major milestones. They've made more progress in 2 weeks than the average person will make in 2 months. That's December strategy. The dark side, what gets lost when December becomes a chess move. But let's talk about the cost, because there is one. When you treat December like a strategic business quarter instead of a time to actually be human, something gets lost. And a lot of the ultra-wealthy feel it, even if they don't admit it. First, the obvious, they miss the holidays. Not in the calendar sense, they're technically there at the dinners, at the parties. But they're not present. They're thinking about the deal they're closing. They're checking their phone during family time. They're mentally running through their year-end checklist while their kids are opening presents. They're physically there, but emotionally, they're already in January. And the people around them feel that. Spouses, kids, friends, they can tell when someone's not really there. That distance builds up over time. And eventually, you wake up and realize you've been so focused on winning the next year that you didn't actually live this one. There's also the loneliness of the relationship audit. When you're constantly evaluating people based on their usefulness, you lose the ability to just be with people. Everything becomes transactional. You can't relax into a friendship because you're always subconsciously calculating whether it is worth your time, and that's exhausting. It's isolating. A lot of billionaires talk about not knowing who their real friends are, people who'd be there if they lost everything. And part of that is because they've trained themselves to see relationships as investments. Once you think that way, it's hard to go back. Then there's the optimization trap. When you treat everything, your time, your energy, your relationships, your reflection as something to optimize, you lose spontaneity. You lose the magic of unplanned moments. You lose the ability to just exist without it being productive. And December, more than any other month, is supposed to be that. It's supposed to be the time when you slow down, connect with people you care about, reflect not just on what you did, but on who you became. But when you're locked into billionaire December mode, you miss all of that. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. A lot of the ultra-wealthy regret it later, when they're older, when they've made all the money, closed all the deals, hit all the goals. They look back and realize they didn't savor anything. They optimized their way through life. They won the game, but they didn't enjoy playing it. And December is a microcosm of that. Every year, they make the choice to strategize instead of celebrate. And every year, something small inside them dies a little. They don't realize it at the time, but it compounds. So yeah, the 1% use December differently than you. And it works. It gives them a massive advantage. But it costs something. It costs presence. It costs connection. It costs the ability to just be a person instead of a productivity machine. And whether that trade-off is worth it, that's the question you have to answer for yourself. So here's the reality. While you're wrapping presents and planning New Year's parties, billionaires are executing a completely different December. They're optimizing taxes, cutting dead weight from their network, closing deals while competition sleeps, analyzing the year like a business report, and positioning themselves to dominate January before it even starts. They're not winding down. They're winding up. And that's exactly why the gap between the 1% and the 99% keeps growing. But here's what you need to decide. Do you want to adopt their December? Because you can. You can treat this month strategically. You can make financial moves. You can audit your relationships. You can set up Q1 while everyone else is checked out. You can win December, but you'll also sacrifice something. You'll sacrifice the ease, the celebration, the presence. You'll trade magic for strategy. Maybe the answer isn't to copy them entirely. Maybe it's to take the parts that work and leave the parts that cost too much. Maybe it's spending 1 or 2 days in December being strategic, reviewing your year, making moves, setting up January, but spending the rest actually being present with the people you care about. Maybe it's finding balance in a way the 1% never do because they read too obsessed with winning. Or maybe you go all in. Maybe you decide that winning matters more than presence. That December is too valuable to waste on traditions that don't move you forward. That's your call. But now you know. Now you see what they're doing while you're distracted. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The 1% aren't lucky. They're strategic. Even in December, especially in December. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? So let's bring this full circle. December. For most people, it's the finish line. A time to coast, celebrate, and mentally check out before the new year. But for the 1%, it's a launch pad. It's the month where they make financial moves that save them millions, Audit their relationships like a portfolio manager. Close deals while everyone else is asleep. Analyze their year with cold precision and set up Q1 dominance before the calendar even flips. They're not ending the year, they're engineering the next one. And here's the part that hits different. This isn't luck. This isn't access. This is psychology. It's strategy. It's treating December like the most important month of the year instead of the most disposable. While you're thinking, I'll start fresh in January, they're thinking, I'll win January in December. That mindset shift alone is worth millions over a lifetime. Because by the time you start, they're already halfway to the finish line. But here's what you need to really sit with. The 1% get results with their December strategy. They make more money. They build stronger networks. They enter the new year with momentum instead of starting from zero. That's real. That's measurable. But they also pay a price. They miss the magic of the holidays. They turn relationships into transactions. They optimize so hard that they forget to actually live. And a lot of them, when they're older, look back and realize they won every December, but lost something they can't get back: presence, connection, joy. So the question isn't, should I do what they do? The question is, what parts of their December strategy actually serve me, and what parts would just make me miserable? Maybe you don't need to audit all your relationships, but maybe you do need to cut 1 or 2 people who drain your energy. Maybe you don't need to move millions in assets, but maybe you do need to look at your finances and make one smart year-end move. Maybe you don't need to close deals in the last week of December, but maybe you do need to reach out to a few key people and set up January meetings instead of waiting. You don't have to become them, but you can learn from them. You can take the 1% December playbook and adapt it to your life in a way that doesn't cost your soul. Because here's the reality. Most people waste December. They overspend, they overeat, they procrastinate, and then they show up to January 1st hungover, broke, and hoping this year will be different. That's not a strategy, that's a cycle. And if you keep repeating it, you'll keep getting the same results. The 1% break that cycle by refusing to check out. They stay sharp, stay strategic, stay focused, even when everyone around them is coasting. And yeah, maybe they take it too far. Maybe they sacrifice too much, but the principle is solid. December matters. How you end the year determines how you start the next one. And if you treat it like it matters, you'll enter January with momentum, clarity, and advantages that most people won't have. So here's your move. You still have time. December isn't over. You can still make this month count. Review your year not emotionally, but strategically. What worked? What didn't? Who added value to your life? Who drained it? What financial moves can you still make before December 31st? What relationships can you strengthen? What Q1 opportunities can you set up right now? Don't wait for January. Don't buy into the fresh start myth. Start now. Use the time everyone else is wasting. That's how you close the gap. The 1% aren't superhuman. They just refuse to follow the script everyone else follows. They zig when everyone zags. They execute when everyone celebrates. They see December as an edge, and they exploit it. Now you know the playbook. Now you see what's possible. What you do with that, that's on you. If you're into this kind of content, subscribe to Just 1% and comment your favorite topic about the top 1% mindset.